Welcome into the latest edition of ESPN FC. I'm Kay Murray. A little later in the show, I'll be joined by Ali Moreno as we look back on La Liga's action today. But we will be starting in the Premier League because there is a big derby coming up this weekend in Manchester. It is Man City against Manchester United. In terms of the table, well, there's 19 points between the sides. City in first, as you can see, and United in fourth, having played the same amount of games. But when you actually look at the head-to-head between the two sides in their last 9 games, well, it's even Stevens right now. It's 4 wins for each side and 1 draw as well. And in terms of Man City's record under Pep Guardiola at home against Manchester United, it actually favours United, as we now welcome in Craig Burley and Nedum Onuoha. And I'll start with you, Nedum. With those stats that we're seeing and the results in recent meetings between the two, how worried is City, or should they be, about Manchester United?
I don't think they should be worried as such, but they do have to take into account the fact that United appear to be quite comfortable playing at the Etihad, which seems like a crazy thing to think. Like, to the fact that United have won 4 out of the last 6 games at the Etihad whilst Pep Guardiola's been in charge. It just seems crazy because in that time, you know, City have been competing for titles alongside a couple other sides, and whereas United haven't really been part of that sort of motion, yet still they find a way to get a result. But I think I like the setup of this game, just because, you know, City are obviously only 3 points ahead of Liverpool now, and United are fighting really hard for that 4th place position. So it's going to be one of those derbies of old where there's a lot on the line for both sides, whereas in the past, hasn't necessarily always felt that way. But I think, as I say, City will acknowledge it, go into it, try and take it as seriously as possible, and understand that, you know, between now and the end of the season, the quest for perfection is going to be key, because if they can achieve it, then they win the league.
Craig, why do you think it is that Manchester United have had this success over City in recent years?
Well, I think, you know, for the most part, Kay, Man City have completely dominated these games from a football perspective, but they have made mistakes, and they have found a team in United that have sat in very deep and then just taken their chance with, you know, a mistake at the back, or, you know, a good counter-attack and a bit of pace up front. So I think that's the main reason. I mean, some of the games, thinking back, that United have won, I think, you know, City fans had to sat there thinking, how the hell did that happen? So I think City have to guard against that, obviously, at the weekend, that they are going to dominate, that they are a much superior side, but they have been caught out, as you mentioned, quite a few times in these derbies. So I think that's enough to spur the team talk on before the game, that if City cut out the basic errors at the back and they make sure they have a good shape and, you know, don't make any silly decisions defensively, then the chances are they're going to win this game. So, and maybe we'll see some changes to Rangnick's team to try and sort of combat and play a counter-attacking style.
Just find that yourself, Nedum, that sometimes it's been a bit of a head-scratcher as to how City have lost out to United in these games.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But as Craig's sort of alluding to there, there's a sort of aspect about United, I think it's to some extent going to the Etihad and just taking on that underdog role really well. And with some of the personnel that they have up front, they have a threat in behind. And I think that's one of the keys, I believe, in terms of doing well against Man City, is being able to stretch the game. If you have no outball where you can get City running back towards their goal out of shape, and, you know, without like the true sort of discipline you have when everything's in front of you, then it poses a far different threat. Because there's tons of times when you'll see, like, I think there was a goal maybe in the derby last year at the Etihad, United are on the break, maybe it was Rashford down the left-hand side, then they end up playing somebody and then there's a goal, and you'll be encouraged. But if they put up a side whereby they're going to try and just outplay them, keep everything in front of City, then I think it plays into their hands. But as we've seen in the recent games, you know, the Spurs game, and to a certain extent the goal they conceded against Fulham in the FA Cup for Man City, like, there is space in behind them. But if you're not going to have players who are prepared to try and run into it, then you face a far tougher challenge than, say, attempting to do just that. So it'll be an interesting sort of tactical battle, I believe, come Sunday.
I think,
go on, Craig.
Yeah, I think, Kay, that it's not like Guardiola has to go back to the derby matches for a reminder to his players. He's only got to go back to Southampton away recently, which wasn't a defeat, but it was a counter-attacking game from Southampton. And then the biggest one was the Spurs game at the Etihad recently. I mean, yeah, it was brilliant finishing from Spurs, but if that wasn't a smash and grab, I don't know what is, because City completely outplayed them. But they didn't defend particularly well, certainly for the first goal, when they were so high up, and I think it was Diaz that got caught. And obviously at the end they got caught out as well after getting back with the penalties. So there's some really fresh in the memory reminders for these players that yeah, they're likely to dominate, but only recently they've had the backside bitten by sort of switching off at the back and paid the ultimate price against Spurs. One of the reasons that we actually have a Premier League title race back on the cards.
Yeah, let's get to that then, shall we? You mentioned Ruben Dias getting caught out there. He can't get caught out in this game because he's not going to be available for the next 4 to 6 weeks, Nedum. Let's talk about the impact of that and the impact it could have on the title race if they don't come away with a positive result in this one.
Yeah, I think the nature of this result itself, it offers huge encouragement for Liverpool. But the fact is, worst case scenario, if City do lose and Liverpool win, then they're on the same points, and it still, in some ways, will come down to that head-to-head potentially in a month's time. But it's important to just keep applying pressure. Whoever's playing first, try and apply that pressure to the opposition, make them have to sort of sit there and say, well, now we have to get something. And City, they're very capable. You can see there from the odds, like the bookmakers, they do get things wrong sometimes, but it's fair enough to think that City are favourites to win a title when they've won 3 of the last 4. To talk about the Ruben Dias situation, I think that is a big blow, because one thing about Pep this season, he's like to rotate those guys that play centrally, and I think the Nathan Ake miss as well. I think he's out for a little while. I think that could also be key because they're down to 2 seniors now, and the hope is for him that I imagine they don't get suspended, they have no more injuries, because they're going to have to rely upon them to defend at the highest standard. Because I think in times gone by, when they've tried to go for titles and so on, they've had to mix things up a little bit, throw Fernandinho back there, and for as good a footballer as he is, he's not as dominant in that position as the other people who were there. So I think it's going to be a big blow for them. But the hope, as I say, is that they can still maintain a level of performance with the guys who are left, because they are capable. But the drop down after that, it's quite a big one.
We talk about that, Craig, the outcome for the title race if it doesn't go City's way. But then if you look at it on the flip side as well, if it doesn't go Manchester United's way, what does it mean for them in the race for the top 4?
The struggle continues. It's just simple. It's as simple as that. And obviously, a result for them would be huge, absolutely huge. But yeah, they're in a real bun fight for that 4th spot. A conversation I don't think many of us were having at the start of the season, even though most of us felt that Solskjaer certainly wasn't the man. We didn't envisage them having the problems up until when he was sacked, and even so, the problems after he was sacked seem to be even sort of more problematic. It's not only poor performances, there has been, as you well know, numerous and almost daily leaks coming out of that camp, and the most recent one is the so-called, some of the players are not happy with Harry Maguire's form, which is quite ironic really when you look at all the games that they've played and all the games that they've got coming up, which is quite ironic, because tell me who is in form at Man United to complain about anybody else's form. So yeah, it's been one problem after another, but a result of course for them would be huge. I just don't see it happening. I think there's too much on the line here. I think the fact that City don't have that gap anymore is going to whet their appetite to go and get the job done. And we've seen Manchester United labour of late, even against relegation threatened Watford at home recently. Loads of chances, couldn't finish them off, and it's kind of been the story of a lot of their season. So I would be surprised if we're not looking at a City win come Sunday afternoon.
Is it a big win, Craig, or is it a tight win?
Well, I could see Man City taking 2 or 3 goals off them. I think United have looked a bit edgy defensively, and City will create chances. So I'm going to go for a 2 or 3 goal win for Man City.
Man City, obviously the favourites with the odds makers here. Nedum, what's your prediction?
I'm in a different camp to Craig. I'm still invested in the sea, so I've got to be careful with what I say because people remember it. But it would be nice to see some goals in this game, and I think it's going to make a better fixture just because there's so much on the line now towards the end of the season. So I'm going to go for a high scoring. I'm going to say that City are going to win, but they're going to be a good few goals in this game, I reckon.
There will be. Yeah, go on. You know what? Before we move on, I need a score from you, Nedum. You can be a little bit fence sitting, but I need a score.
I'll say 3-1 Man City. How about that?
All right, 3-1 Man City. Don't worry, you know that we'll always remind you of it here on ESPN FC. We will take a deeper dive looking ahead to the Manchester derby. Big preview coming up on tomorrow's show. Make sure you join us then.
Thank you very much for watching ESPN FC on YouTube. For more highlights, analysis and exclusive content, be sure to subscribe.